It's 11:59 at Gun Owners Radio, and this is the Penn Patriot, music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, and another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind American lines, this is your song.
When I came to this country, I didn't realise the significance of weapon ownership. Now I do, because it changes people to know that you're armed. You think, well, if it all comes down to it, I can at least have a gunfight on the way out. Whereas in the UK, you're already in the situation they want you in, which is without any defence. They can and are just doing what they want. I mean, when you see stuff about British police, except for that very good-looking police woman that actually did seem to know the law quite recently and went, hey, no, people are allowed to protest in that way. This is not how to run a country. This is not how to run a world, man. You need to be in control of your own individual life, in control of your own family, under the authority of higher purpose, a higher purpose ordained by God.
Hey everybody, welcome to Gun Owners Radio. My name is Michael Schwartz. I am your co-host. One of the other co-hosts, Alicia, is out on assignment. She's doing something really cool. And I'm coming to you remotely from the formerly great state of Virginia. So appreciate you watching the show. And then Dakota, tell everybody who you are.
Rich and I are holding down the studio in here. Happy to be here. My name's Dakota Adelphia, and you can really read all about me at dakotadelphia.com. I don't need to give my whole spiel every time. Just go to my website. I have an about page and all the things I do. So
all the many things that you do. And you do a lot, and I really truly appreciate it. You do all kinds of cool stuff. So thank you so much. It's an honor to be able to be on a show with you. Okay, so a couple of announcements. Due to popular demand, we're actually adding 10 additional slots to our sold out class with Massad Ayoob.
Awesome.
I think it's great. We sold out, and we went and talked to the venue and spoke to Massad Ayoob, and Rich did asked a bunch of questions, and it turns out we can fit 10 more people in. 10 awesome. More people. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to miss this. Dakota, tell a little bit about the class.
Deadly Force instructor. Yes.
Yes, I believe, right? Yeah,
that one. Yes, that's the one. So I took that from Moss back in, I don't even want to guess. It was a couple of years ago. I went to Detroit for it. Loved the class, didn't love Detroit so much, but that's a different story. Moss is one of those kinds of guys that you can just listen to him talk forever. He is not a boring lecturer. So even though, when you look at the description of the class, it is very lecture heavy. Obviously, it's hours and hours and hours every day in the classroom just listening to him talk. But there was never any point in the lectures where I was like, oh man, is this guy ever going to stop? It's super entertaining the whole time. He's got such a great personality, and you're learning so much throughout each day that you're just like trying to keep up with your notes. So my kind of recommendations for anyone who's taking the class is, if you're a fast typer, you should bring a laptop and type your notes, because if you are trying to keep up by hand, you are going to miss a lot of things that you'll wish that you had written down later. His Deadly Force instructor curriculum really influenced all of the concealed carry curriculum that I have created over the years. It's influenced a lot of my legal segments when I talk about, how to respond if you do get involved in a situation where you need to use force, what to do after the fact. A lot of that is material that came from these ideas that Massad Ayoob has in his Deadly Force instructor. If you're an instructor of any kind, even if you're just, a basic pistol instructor and you don't plan on teaching concealed carry classes or anything like that, you can still benefit from this information on a personal level, if you got involved in a situation. But also, you will have students who come to you with moral dilemmas, or with, hey, my neighbor has kind of been, stalking me, or this or that. And you will have a lot more confidence in your response to those students after taking a class like this. So don't think you have to be like a CCW instructor or you have to be planning on doing any of that. This is great info for you and your family to have, and then you'll also be able to share things with students as they ask. So I highly recommend the class. Towards the end, there's some presentations, so you get to, prepare a slide deck and present it to the class. Something I did, and I don't think it was required in the class, but it was super useful for me, is as part of my presentation, I created feedback forms and I passed them out in the class and I had everybody give me comments. And on the feedback form, I asked really specific questions about my presentation style, if they liked the way that I presented the material, if the slides were neat, and, just different things like that. And the feedback I got from that was so helpful in how I prepared slide decks in the future, because the class is full of students who want to do really well and want to teach well. So overall, it was a fantastic experience. I definitely recommend the class.
Excellent. I agree. And I got to tell you, I think it's a great point. You don't necessarily have to be a professional instructor to benefit from this class. But I also, if you are a professional instructor and you haven't taken this curriculum from Massad Ayoob, this is one of those, it feels necessary. It feels like required curriculum for someone who's a professional instructor, even if you're a part-time professional instructor. And, here we have it right here in San Diego. I don't know how many more times this curriculum is going to get offered by Massad Ayoob. I certainly don't know how many more times it's going to be brought to you here in Southern California. So if you're in Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, even LA, man, you got to come take this class. I know a lot of people travel to take this class in other parts of the country. So it's certainly not outlandish to think that coming to San Diego for the duration, from LA or other parts north is bizarre. So there you go. More information, go to gunownersradio.com, gunownersradio.com. Again, only 10 slots, and the first 20 went quick. So if you're even kind of interested, sign up as soon as possible. All right, next big announcement. Dakota, I don't even think you know this announcement.
I do not.
It just happened. We decided to do something cool. It was from the feedback of some of our more active volunteers. There is a movie night, a San Diego County Gun Owners Movie Night that's coming
fun.
up on, we're going to take over the whole theater. So everybody in the theater is going to be San Diego County Gun Owners or Gun Owners Radio, or, in this universe. You're not going to have any of the unwashed masses in our theater.
No randos.
We enjoy no randos. Yeah. Get out of our theater. And the movie, it's July 7th, 2026. It is 6:30 p.m. It's at the Regal Edwards in Mira Mesa. So that big movie theater right off the 15 in Mira Mesa, which is pretty central. Mm-hmm. Whether you're in South County, North County, East County, Mira Mesa is pretty central. Anyway, the movie is Young Washington. It's a special screening for the movie Young Washington, which is described as the remarkable story of a young man whose courage, character, and leadership would help shape the future of America. I don't know how many people are familiar with this, but we had a president named George Washington. And he was he was among the first of the presidents that we've had. Don't remember if he was the actual first. I think so. But anyway, a lot of people know about George Washington and his teeth and his, chopped down a cherry tree, whatever. But I don't know how many people really know his origin story. So look at this. If you're a comic book movie person, this is the prequel. This is his origin story. And it talks about how he got to prominence and why he ended up being the general of the Continental Army and eventually, of course, our first president. So I'm looking forward to it. So there you go, Dakota.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, right. You can get tickets. Go to SanDiegoCountyGunOwners.com or SDCGO.org. I think tickets are like $25. It's not, totally affordable night.
Nice. Yeah, no, that sounds great. I'm not sure if it's based on the book, but I did read a book. I think the title was Young Washington. It was about like him being a soldier. in the British Empire. I read a whole book on his like younger days, but I don't think the book started in childhood. But anyway, it was an entertaining read, so hopefully the movie is also entertaining.
There you go. And I'm anticipating and encouraging a popcorn fight, so that'll be even more fun. So if you
That
can
sounds
make it,
epic.
yeah, if you can make it, come on out, have fun with us. It really, truly, we did this a long time ago with the Benghazi movie, and that was a lot of fun. And then after one of the gun shows, we did it with Red Dawn, and that was a lot of fun. So join us. It'll be
Sounds
great.
super fun. So I heard that class on May 30th was pretty successful.
Yeah? Tell us more.
Well, I just heard that we've been getting a lot of questions about it. I think, are we going to have another one? The Tactical Communications and Signals Intelligence class?
We actually are. It's funny you bring that up. The Tactical Communications and Signals Intelligence class is coming to Oceans. Around you are full of information.
You
Dakota.
cut out right as you said the location. It said, all I heard is it's coming to Ocean. I was like, that's not where it is. It's in Oceanside.
We're having it in the ocean. We're actually going to put on wetsuits and scuba equipment.
Yes.
No, it's Oceanside. As you know, Dakota, the airwaves around you are full of information right now, and you just can't hear it. So most people wait on the news to tell them what's already over in one day. John Baldwin, who's a board member of San Diego County Gun Owners, he's also a 20-year military communications veteran. He will change that in just one day. He's going to teach you to monitor the signals, interpret them, and act on them. You walk out with your own radio, so it comes with a radio. You become the one who already knows. On June 20th in Oceanside. You can reserve your seat by going to gunownersradio.com. Kind of reminds me of, do you remember the movie Heat, Dakota?
Yes, but it's been a long time. I'm pretty sure. It's the one with the mask, right? With the holes in the mask.
Holes in the mask? I don't think it was. I don't remember the one with the holes in the mask. The movie Heat, they got like this, I don't know, but that's okay. We're gonna keep rolling. Well, you know what? We're gonna cut this out. This is gonna be on. This is not gonna. We won't air this part. I promise. It'll be edited out. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so it was the part.
I just looked it up. I have seen this movie. Yes.
You have seen it. Okay.
Yes.
There was part where he said, "Hey, here are the plans on how to rob a bank," and the guy was like, "Well, how did you get this information?" And the guy said, "Well, it's in the air. You just have to reach out and grab it." And that's exactly what he's talking about. There's all this information. That's all around you. And John Baldwin, now I don't know if he's going to teach you how to rob a bank, but he is going to teach you. Hopefully not. I mean, I don't know. Let's see what happens. I'm not here to judge. But anyway, if you want information, go to gunownersradio.com. And then, Kevin Michalowski is coming to town. It's on June 18th. He's the executive editor for USCCA's Concealed Carry Magazine. I don't know. Do you read Concealed Carry Magazine? I put you right on the spot here, right in the middle of the promo.
I do have a magazine subscription to it, and it does come to my house, and I do occasionally leaf through.
Yeah, I get it. So I got to tell you, so I don't know if a lot of people know this. USCCA started out, it was the magazine that came first.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't do the insurance product and then decide, hey, we're going to put out a magazine. And the reason that's important is it's a really good magazine. They do a really, really good job. It's high quality because that was where they started. So he's going to come. He's going to talk. He's actually going to give a talk on, let's see, the name of it is Top CCW Trends and Best Practices for 2026. So that's June 18th, 2026, 5:30 p.m. Now, the cost is, drum roll, free. This is completely free. And not only is it free, but there's going to be pizza and giveaways. It's at Discount Gun Mart, right where Dakota is sitting, or at least a few feet from where Dakota
I was going to say, it's not in this room, but it is nearby.
In her chair. We're all just going to congregate around Dakota.
I'm not going to be there, unfortunately. I'm out of town, but I heard it's going to be great, and I hope
forget it. Cancel the whole thing. What's the point if Dakota's not there? No, it's still going to be there. DGM Training Center on Marina. It's all kinds of room, but you do need to sign up. Go to gunownersradio.com. Totally free, and it comes with pizza And as of this recording, it's almost full. So if you have any interest at all, you need to sign up quick like a bunny.
Love it.
All right. On the show, Dakota, what do we got coming up on the show? What's your favorite part of the show coming up here?
Yeah. Well, you are going to talk to John Petrolino. That should be a great conversation. We're going to talk to Andrew Dyer. He is a KPBS reporter or journalist, and he wrote a story about the mosque-attack that we're going to talk to him about. We're going to talk a little bit about elections. Obviously, that is the thing of the moment, maybe good news, maybe bad news, but that is what is happening. So we'll be talking about election stuff, and then we're going to talk about the New England Second Amendment Activist Conference, because Mike just went there and had a good time.
There you go.
He's going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk to Sam, Stump My Nephew. So
we're going to try to stump my nephew. I think this is a good looking question today. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fun. Awesome. Thank you, Dakota. Alicia, we miss you terribly. Come on back and, safe travels. And she's going to tell us all about her firearms adventures when she gets back. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to share. Tell everybody. Sit back and enjoy the show. And here we go. Gun Owners Radio.
When your rights are on the line and the fight gets real, you need a lawyer who knows the deal. From gun laws to courtrooms, he'll stand by you. John Dillon fights for the red, white, and blue. John Dillon defending your rights, keeping bare arms with truth and might. From GVROs to self-defense calls, Dillon Law Group, he fights for us all. When freedom's under fire, who you gonna call? Dillon Law Group, justice for all. DillonLawGP.com.
Dakota, I don't know if you heard, but there was a big election this week. Did you hear about that at all?
I did hear. And, not to sidetrack us right off the bat, but I do have a funny ballot drop-off story.
All right, fire away.
So I like to drop off my ballot in person, like same day, maybe day before, but usually same day.
Right.
It's just, there's something about like everybody being there to drop off their ballot, and you're like, seeing other Americans doing their civic duty, and you're like smiling. Yeah, I don't know. There's just like a nice little camaraderie.
The tradition.
About it.
You're traditional.
Yeah,
I like it.
Exactly. And like, I'm not so picky that I like wouldn't vote if I couldn't get there on Tuesday. I would just vote on Monday instead. But like, it's just a thing I like to do. So anyway, I am in Alpine. I had another thing I was doing there. And so I was like, oh, I'll just go to the Alpine Library. And there's the ballot people who have the little Dropbox thing, and it's the electronic ones. Those are kind of new. I don't know. Maybe they had them last time too, but you put the ballot in and it like locks it inside. It's like a little bag that they carry on their shoulder, and it has like a little beep thing that says, yes, it went in. So anyway, I'm walking up to do that, and one of the ladies that was like volunteering was like, do you guys, because there's a lot of us like walking up at the same time. She's like, do you guys all know that we've been open for like 10 days? Do you all know that you could have come yesterday and parked right here? And she wasn't being rude. She was just like, why are you all here? Like, she was just confused. Yeah. And so, I got a little bit of an audience because there's a couple people also about to drop off the ballot. So I'm like, I'm going to be funny. So I was like, oh, yeah, no, I know you guys are open. I was like, but I like a little anticipation and excitement in my life. And I like that they have to count my vote on the day. Like, I like that they have to like, that my vote could be holding up the election results. And then I like looked around, and a couple people were chuckling because they knew I was joking, obviously. And the lady goes, oh my. She was like, I could tell
she clutched her pearls.
Yes. She was like, oh, what is wrong with this woman? It was very funny. I probably only really cracked myself up, but other people did smirk. So I'll take it as a win.
Worth it. Totally worth it. Dakota giving the election volunteers a hard time. I like it. Very, very good. I like it. Well, good on you.
Comedian, not giving him a hard time. Being a comedian.
Good on you for voting. I voted as well. I hope everybody listening also voted. We put a lot of time and effort into encouraging people to vote, and we
Yeah.
hope that they did, and we hope that they used our voter guide. But let's go over, Dakota. I got to tell you, it's pretty interesting. We're going to talk about some of the elections that we concentrated on, somewhat in California, but definitely here in San Diego. And I want to start with, where should we start? Should we start with the governor's race?
Yeah, let's do it.
So the governor's race was obviously very interesting. I still maintain that the strategy would have been 8-9 months ago had the Republican Party decided to implement this strategy. I think they could have been successful with it, and that is to get 2 Republicans into the runoff so that at least one Republican wins. What happened was, of course, Steve Hilton is one of the top 2. It looks like there are still some votes to be counted, but it's pretty. It looks pretty clear that it's going to be Steve Hilton as one of the top 2 there. Now, I had a contentious interview with Steve Hilton, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan. I don't think he brings a whole lot to the table. I think he is more about ego than he is sincerely trying to improve the California environment. He's not real strong on firearms. He really doesn't know what he's talking about, and it's not something that philosophically he's very passionate about. But he's the guy that got in there. I don't know what San Diego County gun owners is going to do as far as an endorsement. Are they going to switch from Chad Bianco to Steve Hilton since Steve Hilton made it, or are they going to stay out? That's going to be up to the board to decide. I think it's probably better that people vote for Steve Hilton than the alternative. But honestly, not a whole lot better. I just think that it's an odd. First of all, he doesn't have a chance of winning. If you look at the numbers, if you add Steve Hilton's votes, his percentage, and you add Bianco's percentage in, at no time did these guys break like 40%.
No.
I think maybe they got up to 41, 42%. But as the election got closer, as Steve Hilton gained traction, he was taking a lot of votes away from Chad Bianco. He wasn't necessarily, at the end, neither one of them were necessarily bringing in new votes. They were just stealing votes from one another. I think some of the undecideds, broke the way that they were anticipating to break. I think that Steve Hilton picked up a number of votes simply from being ahead. In other words, there were a lot of strategic voters who just said, hey, if this guy's the guy that's got a chance, then great. There was a lot of talk about splitting the vote, not having a Republican in the runoff at all. And I think that panicked people. I think it was terribly arrogant, though. Dakota, one of the strategies that they use is they say, hey, we're going to try to get as many people and things on the ballot in order to motivate people to show up and vote.
Of course.
So there's a couple things on the ballot. For example, voter ID is something that's very popular, and people that support it see it as a unifying issue. In other words, the left and the right, there are people on the left and the right that are both passionate about it. So they're hoping that brings people out to vote. So they got voter ID. I mean, they believe in it. The people that put it on the ballot, which by and large was, by the way, Reform California, Carl DeMaio, which we're going to talk a lot more about later. He's the one that really got it on the ballot almost single-handedly. It's pretty amazing. But that'll bring more people out. People will be passionate about that. Therefore, they will vote based on that. And while they are there, they'll vote for other like-minded, candidates. But towards the end, Steve Hilton was making this claim. He felt that if he wasn't on the ballot, that people wouldn't show up and vote, as if he is so motivating that, hey, if Steve Hilton's not on the ballot, then I'm not going to show up and vote at all. I thought it was, it was a tactic to get people to show up. It was terribly arrogant. It was totally misguided. I thought it was ridiculous. I don't think the guy is nearly as important as he thinks he is, and he's not as popular as he thinks he is. But he won. Republicans and some others decided that he was their guy, and so he's going into the general election. The big concerns I have about that is, number one, people are going to concentrate on that race as if he has a real shot, as if they can actually make a difference, when there are other races around them for state office, county office or city office or school board where they really could spend some time, make a donation, and really truly have an effect. But instead, they're going to go, hey, we're going to save California with one silver bullet, and that silver bullet is Steve Hilton. That's a big concern for me, Dakota, and I think it's a legit concern. Because I really, truly, I don't believe that Steve Hilton doesn't have a shot to win. He's not going to get 40, he'll get 40%. Historically, maybe he'll get 39, maybe he'll get 41, but he's not going to get 50 plus one.
No.
It's not going to happen. It's a pipe dream. No matter how hard people want it, no matter how much they campaign. The other thing is Steve Hilton voters have been convinced is the best word I can use. Fooled is the best word, or is the worst word I can use, into believing that somehow he carries their flag. And I just historically, if you vet this guy out, he's not lockstep with the Republican Party, and their platform.
I think at this point in the governor's election, knowing that Hilton does not have a chance of winning, knowing that there will not be a pro-2A government in office, I think that we should spend maybe just a little bit of time talking about how horrible of an option the Democrats decided to elect, because Becerra is going to be our new governor. And for those of you who don't know who he is or know much about him, you voted for the guy that supported magazine restrictions. He was the attorney general when a lot of bad stuff was getting passed here in California. He was a 1 in 30 one handgun purchase every 30 days. He, obviously supported the roster and had a huge influence on not allowing new guns onto the roster. Like, some of his policies are among the very worst Second Amendment policies we've ever had in California. And putting him in a more important position than AG is just it's honestly shocking to me that enough gun owners, because there's gun owners on both sides. There's lots of Democratic gun owners. There's lots of Republican gun owners. Gun owners didn't go, hey, I don't care if the person I'm voting for isn't exactly in line with my policies, or I don't care if I'm going outside of my party to vote. I refuse to put the man in office who did all of this horrible anti-Second Amendment policy work when he was our attorney general. And he has not gotten less extreme, by the way. You hear him talking, he is more extreme now than he was when he was the AG in 2017 to, I think it was like 2017 to 2021, but don't quote me on that. He's more extreme now. And everybody just got together and said, yeah, that's the guy. That's Hilton Bianco drama aside. That is so crazy. It's literally another Newsom. And I thought kind of everybody was at this point where we're like, we don't really love the direction California's going. We don't really love all of the new gun problem, the Glock ban, all this other stuff that's coming out. I thought gun owners were going to show up in force a little bit more. And even if it had been, I'm not a fan of any of the top options here, but Becerra? Like, what are we doing? Anyway, that's my rant. Go ahead.
I think totally valid. Becerra is a dangerous guy when it comes, to politics, especially your Second Amendment rights, which is what we talk about here. But the problem is, and statistically, the numbers, he's going to win.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. What you're going to see from the Hilton campaign is, now that he's through the primary and he's, he beat Bianco and he got through the primary, you're going to see him take a hard left turn. And this is somebody who already didn't really care much about your gun rights. And why do I know that? Because I've talked to him on the phone. He and I have discussed it, and I've interviewed him.
Yeah.
So what am I talking about? Why do I know he's going to take a left turn? Well, play the video real quick, Rich. This was right after he found out he won.
Oh, I haven't even seen this.
I haven't. As I've said all along, I'm really looking forward to working with everyone to bring change to California. Republicans and beyond the Republican Party. I think I mentioned last night, Matt Mahan and I see things very much the same way in policy terms. That's an example of someone I think that really should join our alliance for change, because we've got to have common sense, practical policies to make life better in California. Chad Bianco, anyone else who wants to join our mission for change, my door's open. Looking forward to working together.
Okay, so if you don't know who Matt Mahan is, he is the mayor of San Jose.
That
Matt
is
Mahan,
crazy.
he doesn't line up with Republicans on
At
anything,
all.
on any issue. I mean, look, we're a Second Amendment show. He certainly doesn't line up on guns, but Matt Mahan is pro illegal immigration. He's pro sanctuary city. He's pro taxes. He's pro choice. He's anti-gun, and that's the first name out of Steve Hilton's mouth as, hey, here's who I want to get on my team. And then Chad Bianco is an afterthought. No, by the way, if he wants to fall in line and help us, and I can already hear, I've already had people say, oh, well, Mike, you don't understand. He's trying to fool the Democrats into,
Voting for him.
I think he just fooled the Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
That's who he fooled. I think he just fooled the Republicans into voting for him. But honestly, it doesn't matter. Dakota, we're going to have to face exactly who you said, and that's Becerra, who's an extremist and anti-gun. Okay, that's the governor's race. I want to talk
there.
Yeah, I know. Fantastic news, right? The only good news is, what could the governor have actually done? We have a legislative problem in California. We don't have an executive branch problem necessarily in California. It's the legislature that's the problem. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what could he actually do? The reality is, well, gee, he could, if Hilton were there, he could veto an anti-gun bill. First off, I don't think he'd stick his neck out and do that. But second, it really wouldn't matter. Democrats hold 60 of 80 seats in the California Assembly and 30 of 40 seats in the California Senate. So a California governor's veto can easily be overridden by 2/3 in each chamber, which they have way more. They have a super majority. So 54 Assembly votes, 27 Senate votes, which they have far more than they need, would override a veto. So they're just, I mean, people want this easy solution and this silver bullet, and they think that the governor is your majesty rather than just an executive. But anyway,
Yeah.
let's move on. The biggest winner on Tuesday in San Diego County, and frankly in other parts of the state in Southern California, but especially here in San Diego, was Reform California and Carl DeMaio. Reform California and Carl DeMaio swept the election. I mean, everybody they supported won. There were people that they supported who shouldn't have gotten anywhere near winning. And they got across the finish line because of the efforts of Carl DeMaio and Reform California and what they did. And it's frankly really, really impressive. One example is you have Rebecca Jones, who's the mayor of San Marcos. You have John Franklin, who we've had on the show. He's the mayor of Vista. Now, John Franklin raised almost $1 million. He had every endorsement you can think of. By all measure, it looked like he was the guy. He had the inside track.
Yeah.
Rebecca Jones had very little money. She had no infrastructure. She really it just had nothing. There was nothing to her campaign, frankly. And the only thing she did have was Reform California. Reform California vetted her, worked with her, and said, hey, this is the candidate we think will do the best job as supervisor. They're running for County Board of Supervisors to replace Jim Desmond, who's, running for Congress and he's termed out. And she won. By a commanding lead, something like 45% of three candidates. And she won. And it was all because of Reform. It was pretty phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Every single, I can't think of anybody. I looked through, I couldn't find anybody that Reform backed who lost.
Wow.
They got every single candidate across the finish line, including a lot of candidates that overlapped with San Diego County gun owners. So I'm really thankful for their efforts, which brings us to what I think is our biggest victory, and that's Christy Bruce-Lane.
Yeah.
we definitely were on the same page with reform with Christy Bruce-Lane. Christy Bruce-Lane is running for state senate. Brian Jones is being termed out, and she was running against an effective Democrat who she still has to beat, and she was running against a Republican who jumped in at the last minute. Not a fan of the Republican. He's on the San Marcos City Council. You've heard me talk about him before. His name is Ed Musgrove. I could not get a straight answer out of the guy. Years ago, he submitted a questionnaire that was less than stellar when it comes to Second Amendment. We really just didn't like his lack of character and truth. But for some reason, he was picked to run for state senate against a fantastic candidate in Christy Bruce-Lane. Christy Bruce-Lane won big time, and it was very much in large part to the support of San Diego County gun owners, and of course, Reform California. It was something like $3.5 or $4 million was spent against Christy Bruce-Lane, and we were still able to effectively get her over the finish line. She and I spoke the day after the election, and she was very thankful to San Diego County gun owners for all that we did, and we did a lot. So congratulations to Christy Bruce-Lane, and congratulations to the members of San Diego County gun owners for being members and doing what you did and manning the tabletops and doing all the things it takes to win. Now here, I got here's a little, you want some gossip, Dakota?
Yes, I love a good gossip.
A little political gossip. So a little birdie, basically, the question is, why did Ed Musgrove get recruited? If we had it's a good question. We have a perfectly good candidate in Christy Bruce-Lane. So why was he recruited to run against a perfectly good candidate who, by the way, shellacked him? And the whispers, go ahead. Yes.
Is it because they want him to run for something else soon? And so they were like, let's get his name out there.
I wish it were that pure of a motivation.
Okay.
The whispers, the rumor mill, the unconfirmed whispers that I believe. So the replacement is Brian Jones. Brian Jones is being termed out. Mm-hmm. So where does Brian Jones go after next year? What does he do? There's no place for him to run. He didn't run for higher office. Brian Jones needed a job. So Christy Bruce-Lane wasn't going to hire him. But if he helped recruit and get Ed Musgrove into that office, Brian Jones would have a job up in Sacramento.
Interesting.
And then who knows? Maybe he'd run for supervisor after Joel Anderson leaves. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But that is what I'm being told from my sources is the real reason that Ed Musgrove got recruited. It's not that Ed Musgrove was super successful as a city council member. He didn't, there's nothing he championed. In fact, Rebecca Jones was the mayor, and she even distanced herself from him, saying, hey, he's trying to take credit for things that she as mayor did. So that's the gossip, that Senator Brian Jones needed a job. So he recruited Ed Musgrove to run. So hopefully he could hire him. Okay. So congratulations, Christy Bruce-Lane. Congratulations. We still have to get her across the finish line. So please help us. A couple other things. Richard Bailey is running in the city of San Diego. Mm-hmm. He got through. Richard Bailey was a founding board member for San Diego County gun owners and is a very legit and sincere supporter of Second Amendment. Angelica Martinez down in Chula Vista, she got across the finish line and will be in the runoff, of course, in November. And she's going to need your help down in Chula Vista. Man, it would be really nice to have a foothold down in Chula Vista. There's nobody on that city council that cares about your Second Amendment in Chula Vista, not one person. And then I have an interesting factoid, Dakota. You ready for this?
Fact, I'm ready.
Okay. On the November ballot, for the first time, we believe in history, there will be a mother-daughter duo on the same ballot.
That is so interesting.
It's kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
Shirley I always get her name wrong. Gosh, I was so confident. I went into it so confident.
Nakatawasi.
Shirley Nakatawasi is in the runoff for treasurer. and her daughter Mariko is running for re-elect. Well, she's running for election in the city of Imperial Beach City Council, where she's already on the city council. She was appointed, and now she's getting elected. So for the first time, no one else can find a time in history where a mother-daughter were on the same ballot, and boom, they're both running for different office, and they're both fantastically excited about Second Amendment. So I'm looking forward to making sure that they both make it to the endorsement list. I believe they will, but obviously the board has to pick. But how cool is that?
So fun. That's super interesting. I'm sure there have been father-son duos on ballots before, but mother-daughter feels like something that would have been tough. There's not as many women in politics. Although I will say, this ballot felt very even as far as options between men and women on the ballot. I was surprised at how many, feminine names I was seeing in the different, like, lieutenant governor and stuff like that. I felt like it was a different mix up this time around.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's so much leadership at the county level, or I should say at the government level in the county, whether it's city or county or even state level. There's so much representation by women. It almost just feels like what glass ceiling. It feels like that concept seems like old. It seems ancient now. If anything,
at least here, right? Like, at least our perspective here. I'm sure in some other place, maybe Kansas had a little bit more male heavy ballot. I don't know, but it was just an interesting thing. I was like, wow, there's a lot of women on here, but
truly. And so congratulations to Shirley and Mariko. You guys, especially Mariko. Mariko is, I don't even think she's 30 yet. And she's a huge leader. She's going to be a huge leader in San Diego politics. And her mom already is. Her mom's really a wonderful lady. She comes to our events. She's such a sweetheart. We spoke the day after the election, and she's excited, and she loves San Diego County gun owners. Last thing I need to touch on, because I got a lot of questions. We endorsed John Franklin, and a lot of people asked, well, hey, he didn't end up on the voter guide at the last minute. When they looked the last few weeks prior to the election, he didn't actually end up on the voter guide. And I'll just tell you, there were political attacks put out by John Franklin that were so beyond okay that the board had an emergency meeting and decided unanimously to pull him off the endorsement list. We didn't make a big deal out of it. In other words, we didn't have like a press release or anything, but we felt like it was a measured and appropriate response. I'm not going to go into the attacks that sparked this because they're so vile. I really don't want to repeat them. But it's not the fact that he made attacks, because attacks are normal in politics. Everybody, snipes at everybody else. But the content of the attacks he was accusing somebody that we support of doing illegal and predatory things, knowing that it wasn't true. And it was kind of one of those, well, I don't know, take a look, but it looks like he's and I said, you know what, when we started San Diego County Gun Owners, yes, we want to advance Second Amendment, but we also want to make sure that we're supporting people who are doing the right thing, who are, have the character it takes to be a public leader. We're not just going to support somebody because they're pro Second Amendment. We want to make sure that we have high quality people that we ask others to vote for and donate to and volunteer for. So we did pull him at the last minute. I do believe that his attacks negatively affected his campaign, and I believe that our, the fact that we pulled our support negatively affected his campaign as well. But I think we did it for the right reasons. I would rather lose and be able to look at myself in the mirror than win the wrong way. And, we all still have to live. We all still have to live with ourselves. We all still have to say, hey, we did the right thing. We're good people. So Anyway, that's what happened there. And I don't know. We'll see what I think that mistake by John Franklin cost him a lot politically, not just this current election, but I think it cost him a lot politically. So, okay. So what's next? Well, the cities don't really have a lot of primaries. In fact, the only cities that have primaries are Chula Vista, Chula Vista, San Diego. Yeah, Chula Vista and San Diego. That's it. So 2 of the 18 cities. Most of the cities, their election is in November. It's in the general election. So you're going to see a number of additions to our voter guide. But more importantly, we need a lot of help going into November. We need people to man the tabletops. We need people to find more members for us. We need people to make sure that they're paying their dues, their membership, making the donation, because we're spending a lot of money to get these folks elected. We spent a lot of money to help Christy Bruce-Lane and everybody on the voter guide get elected, and we were very effective, and we're very proud of that. So please go to the volunteer section of our website, go to the join section of our website, and make sure that we're not a secret. Make sure that people know, hey, you got to support San Diego County gun owners. Your money is going towards helping get the right people elected and making a real true difference when it comes to the Second Amendment. And I do believe that we can move. I've seen it. I know. It's not that I believe. I know for a fact we can move mountains at the city and county level. I know people are focused on the White House and the governor's race. But I got to tell you, we can really, truly get things done that affect your everyday life if we get the right people elected on city councils, mayor, school board, and all these important lower offices. So that's where we're at. So what do you think, Dakota? Any remarks?
Not really. I mean, I think the message is always get out and vote. Tell your friends to vote. Bully your friends who didn't vote. I was bullying a friend of mine yesterday for not voting. It's really important that if you have any influence in your sphere, which like most folks do, right? Like your friends take your advice, things like that. If you have influence in your sphere, use a couple of days around the election to influence them to vote. Just like you tell your, friend not to take that job or whatever, right? Like you have influence on people, use it in good ways. And this is a good way that you can use it. Get them to vote. And then obviously also bring more people into the Second Amendment community, because when we have more folks who are shooting guns, who are enjoying shooting, they're going to at least, have a higher chance of being more pro 2A when they are in the ballot box. So vote and tell people to vote.
Awesome job. Thanks, Dakota. All right, guys. San Diego County Gun Owners.com or SDCGO.org. Join, volunteer, join, and share with your friends. See you guys.
So the lifeblood of every organization is membership. We absolutely need membership. And you as a Second Amendment activist want to be involved. You want to help make things better. And we have a way for you to be involved, get involved, and stay involved. Look at our volunteer page. If you go to sdcgo.org/volunteer, we keep it up to date, and there's always an opportunity for you to get more involved. Our bread and butter are our shooting socials, where we teach people how to shoot. They've never had a shooting experience. Maybe they're brand new to shooting and they want to have a first-time shooting experience. You can help us do that. Or if you want to help spread the word, we have tabletops at different gun shops, at different events, and you can volunteer to tell people more about the Second Amendment, more about how to get a CCW, or more about being a member of an organization like SDCGO. The good news is it's super easy. We'll help train you. We'll help you get involved. We'll give you the opportunity to do good things.
If you don't have the time to volunteer, there's another way that you can help too. We are always looking for folks to donate. And if you want to pledge $5,000 in this next year, we will have you on our show as a guest host. So come join us in the studio. We would love to have you here for one episode, and that is for a price of $5,000.
$5,000 donation to San Diego County Gun Owners gets you a guest host with me and Dakota and Alicia minutia, and you get to talk about whatever you want to talk about, and you get to do whatever you want to right here on Gun Owners Radio. So thank you so much. Whatever you do, just do a little bit more than you did last year and help us defend and preserve the Second Amendment right here in your backyard.
Last week, KPBS News reporter Andrew Dyer, who is the Military and Veterans Affairs reporter for local San Diego KPBS, did a story called "Did California's Assault Weapons Ban Save Lives in the San Diego Mosque-Attack?" And there was both video and written, and he interviewed us. So we've asked him to come on the show today, but we want to make sure that you see the video so that you understand fully what we're talking about.
Video from the live stream of the attack circulated online after the shooting. Experts tell KPBS one of the firearms visible in that video is a semi-automatic Ruger Mini 14. California's assault weapons ban prevents these rifles from having certain features. They can't have a pistol grip or a forward pistol grip. They have to have a fixed stock and be at least 30 inches long. Magazine capacity is limited to 10 rounds.
And from everything that I saw from the video, it looked like it met those criteria and looked like a very stock firearm that you could purchase at many dealers here in California.
Steve Lindley is a policy advisor for the gun control organization, the Brady Campaign. He also ran the Bureau of Firearms for the state of California for 8 years. He says altogether, the state bans features that make semi-automatic rifles more deadly, especially limits on magazine capacity.
If you have 10 round magazines, you have 10 rounds to shoot before you need to change magazines. If you have a 30 or 40 round magazine, again, you can shoot 30 or 40 rounds before you need to reload.
3 people were killed in the attack, including an armed security guard. Michael Schwartz is the executive director of the San Diego County Gun Owners PAC. He agrees the rifle in the video is a California-compliant Mini 14, but he says the attack represents a failure of gun control laws.
The assault weapons ban that California has implemented clearly failed. It didn't stop these 2 people.
Lindley says every second of delay counts in such attacks. Delays like stopping to change magazines. That's something a shooter would need to do more often with less capacity.
It is about reducing the number of victims. It's very difficult to stop shootings.
Schwartz says the factors California uses to define assault rifles are cosmetic and didn't impact the effectiveness of the attacker's firearm.
If he had a bigger magazine or had he had a pistol grip or whatever, it wouldn't have changed the outcome of this at all. Looking at the reality of this, a good guy with a gun stopped a bad guy with a gun from killing a lot of kids. Full stop.
The San Diego police and the FBI haven't confirmed what specific types of firearms were used in the attack. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
Andrew from KPBS. Hey, thanks for making the time and thanks for joining me today.
No, thanks for having me.
So the article is, "Did California's assault weapons ban save lives in the San Diego mosque attack?" Can you just briefly summarize the article?
Well, it kind of started with, this video of the live stream the shooters posted, and in the video you could see one of the attackers with a rifle, and looking at the rifle, it had a very small magazine. It looked like a California compliant. I guess with your audience probably know what I'm talking about. It looks like a California compliant rifle, semi-automatic, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting, right? Because we've seen other mass shootings with semi-automatic rifles, maybe not the same model, but other semi-automatic rifles be much more deadly, right? Bigger magazines. And so I just thought, I wonder if this had an impact on the outcome of the shooting. Now, there's a lot of other factors, of course. The bystanders, the victims that authorities say delayed the shooters, being one of them. So, I reached out. I reached out to you, and I reached out to somebody from the Brady organization, and got your thoughts on it and kind of put it out there like, hey, asking the question, right? Did it have an impact? But yeah, that's basically the gist of the article. I kind of referenced this video. I didn't publish the video. It's, best practices not to publish these sorts of videos. It's in the video, you can see the shooter. He reseats the magazine at one point, and then he struggles with the bolt to get. It looks like he's trying to get around the chamber, and it doesn't happen. And at that point, he kind of abandons use of his rifle and pulls out a pistol, and that's where the video kind of ends. But that's kind of the gist of it. Yeah.
So, but the hypothesis was your hypothesis, and it was basically, hey, because this person or these two, or at least the one person with the semi-automatic rifle, because they were using a rifle that did comply with California gun laws, that it decreased the lethality. In other words, there were fewer victims at the mosque. Was that was your original hypothesis, and that was the catalyst for the article?
Pretty much. Not that it's like a direct cause and effect, right? Like, I wouldn't want to credit, legislation with the direct outcome of the shooting, right? There's a lot of things that were happening that were involved. I think the presence of law enforcement, the authorities said you could hear the sirens by the time they really got underway. So there's a lot of things involved, right? But did it have an impact, right? Like, did this affect what the outcome was, is the hypothesis. Yeah.
So when you spoke with the Brady organization representative, what did you learn to support your hypothesis, and what did you maybe learn that didn't support your hypothesis?
Well, you can't ever point at it's never just one thing, right? Like, there's always multiple factors in situations like this, where you did have an armed security guard. You had the two other people in the parking lot. I don't know what the security lockdown procedure in the school was, but the reporting and the authorities suggest that there was time for the people in the school to initiate whatever lockdown procedures they had in place. So it could have been the delay from the guards' presence allowed them to get the doors locked and everything like that. So there's a real hesitance to take any credit away from the victims, right? Like, these people gave their lives, and that clearly helped delay and eventually, stymie these two guys. But because the access to the weapons that they had, right, and it appears these were like their parents' firearms, and their parents, being California residents, had California, compliant weapons, who knows? We can't get into their heads, but had they been in another state, had they had, AR-15s or some of these other more kind of notorious type weapons, could they have executed their plan faster? I don't know. I mean, there's a reason, right? There's a reason why these mass shooters choose the weapons they choose, right? There's a reason that.
Well, actually, let's talk about that for a second. What is the reason these two chose? So they had three weapons: a pistol, a rifle, and a shotgun. What's the reason that they chose the rifle, which happened to be a Ruger Mini 14? Why did they choose that rifle?
I don't know what their history is with these firearms. I don't know if they'd ever been to the range, if they really knew how to shoot, or if they'd only been to the range a few times. I haven't seen any reporting, and the authorities have, really buttoned up on their investigation. So I don't know, like,
But I think the answer is there are only 3 firearms that they had any kind of access to. I mean, they didn't really, like, they couldn't pass it up. They didn't, when the ones stole the firearms illegally from his parents and then gave them to someone illegally and then transported them illegally and then used them illegally. He didn't have a choice. It's not like he went into his parents, wherever they kept them and said, this isn't the firearm I really want. I'd rather have, it was the one that was there. He didn't really he didn't pick it. It's just, that was it. That was the one that he had access to.
Yeah. And early on in the process, they said there was some number like 30 firearms that they said was in one of the homes. I don't know what the access to some of these other guns were, but yeah, they I think the Ruger maybe was a gun that seemed to be something that they thought they could execute their goals with, and that goal was to mimic as best they could the 2019 shooting in Christchurch, New Zealand, that killed more than 50 people.
Well, I guess what I'm saying though is you were saying, hey, these mass shooters pick firearms, to do the most, damage or whatever. I guess what I'm saying is if you walk into a gun shop, an AR pattern rifle is one of the most successful designs in the history of firearms. So if you walk into because it does all the things a firearm is supposed to do well, it stores ammunition really well. You can reload it really well. It shoots really well. It's very accurate. So in other words, it does the things a firearm is supposed to do well. It's, kind of like if you're shopping for a car, you don't go out and you're not going to see a bunch of cars with square tires. The round tires are really proven technologically to be, so when they walk in to buy a firearm, they're going to obviously buy the most common firearm, or the firearm that works the best, which would be, in this day and age, probably an AR pattern rifle. I don't think that they think to themselves, well, I'm going to go get the most lethal or most, dangerous or most, quickest shooting, right? Whatever. They go in and they get what would commonly be sold as a firearm, just like these guys, they picked the firearm they had access to. I guess it just, Andrew, I don't know if it does anything to the discussion of how do we fix these problems if we, villainize these objects that the vast majority of people use for legal reasons, for self-defense, for sport, for all kinds of different, logical and legal purposes. And I just, sometimes I think it's worth pushing back on the terminology we use when we talk about these rifles.
What's I'm curious, what is that terminology that you're what are you talking about?
Well, when we talk, I mean, assault weapon is probably the most common, I mean, that's clearly a pejorative term. California has given it a definition, but it's not an industry term. They've chose that purposely as a pejorative term and gave it a definition, but the industry didn't pick that definition. The industry didn't say, hey, this is an assault weapon. The lawmakers in Sacramento, but then just the phrasing of saying, hey, these mass shooters, pick these lethal weapons. I just don't think that's, I don't think that that's those two things don't really do anything for the discussion, and it's alienating to people who, the 99.999% of the country who, own these firearms and use them legally. I do want to talk about one of the things, to your credit, I really appreciate it, is you reached out to me and you really wanted to know, hey, what did I think about, the firearm that was used? What do I think about the laws, that sort of thing. And I appreciated that. What, from our discussion, what were some of your takeaways that influenced the story or influenced the original hypothesis you had?
Well, I'm not a policy expert. I've, been around firearms my whole life. Like, my dad was a police officer for more than 20 years. He had a second career as a investigator for a county prosecutor. And, I grew up like in this culture, and I've owned firearms. And, so I kind of come from that background where, this is also pre guns being a culture war thing. Like, in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't the same like political cultural identity attached to gun ownership that maybe there is today. It wasn't,
I agree,
as politicized, right? So coming from that, it's always been a really interesting kind of debate for me because I enjoy shooting, and I've never owned an AR-15, but I have shot one a few different times. And I mean, they are the best shooting firearm. They, for the power behind that round, and, there's almost no recoil. It is there's a reason why it's such an effective, firearm at what it does. Right. But then, I think whenever, for me, just personally, I have a child who was in kindergarten in 20, or he was 20, whatever year this was, with the Sandy Hook shooting. And I think that really kind of made me personally just kind of like re-examine like how we talk about this stuff, and like okay, well, if we're not banning guns in this country, but what type of things can be done or have been done to try to, save lives. And so in talking with you, I think it's important to get that, the perspective of, because there's basically two sides, right? People who want these gun control laws, and people who say that these gun control laws don't do anything, right? This is a problem of individuals with violent intents, and you punish, the masses for the actions of a few. So, which I'm not invalidating that perspective. It is a valid one, and that's why I think it's always part of it. But,
Thank you. Thank you for saying my perspective is valid. Well, let me ask.
I wouldn't say it's not.
Before we go further, so I want to, before we get too far off, you said that rightly that the subject has been very politicized in the past 25 years compared to the 70s and 80s. I think the 90s is when it really started to shift, but certainly 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s was far more politicized since the year 2000 than it is, and far more politicized today than it ever was in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Do you think that politicization, do you think that division and that extreme, line in the sand where you're either for us or against this on either side, do you think is that a good thing? Is that beneficial to the subject overall?
No, it's really not, because you do have, and I've encountered this in newsrooms where, I'm like the gun explainer, right? The gun whisperer. Like, I can, people come to me with these questions about the intricacies of what is this rifle, what's the difference between this and this and this and this. So I think for like the gun control side, there's an aversion to, getting educated or getting exposed, going shooting, things like that. And then like on the other side, I think, honestly, I think people who maybe 40 years ago wouldn't have owned 10 firearms, maybe, as part of an exercise of their political, id, they feel obligated to be gun owners, right? Maybe somebody who wouldn't have owned an AR-15 style rifle in 1990, maybe in 2020 they have two of them. I don't know that's true, but I know people close to me who used to tell me that people who bought a lot of guns, that was kind of a strange thing to do. And this was a person who had a handful of guns, and that was in the 90s. And then today they have, a safe full of guns themselves. So, and they kind of follow along that, political line. So I think that it's done a couple different things where you have more guns being in the marketplace than there were previously, and there's a concentration of those guns in maybe fewer hands.
Well, I think that, you described it as strange, which is really a value statement. I would say that it's unusual. It would have been more unusual. I think that there was a higher percentage of people that owned firearms, back in the, 1900s. But I think that it was not strange, but unusual for people to have really large collections, whereas these days, certainly gun ownership is far more common. But I just don't know if it's a good idea to call it strange. I think it's far more accurate and less belittling to just say that it was unusual, and now firearms ownership and gun collections is far more common. But the question was, do you think that the politicalization and the division is good? And you said no, and I agree with you. I don't think it's good either. I think that there are a lot of things that we can do to keep people safe without infringing on people's rights and without villainizing them. But my question is it fair to criticize your article, the name of which is, did California's assault weapons ban save lives in San Diego mosque-attack? And then the original hypothesis being that, yeah, if California didn't have these extremely stringent laws, then more people would have going at that angle, more people would have died. Approaching it from that, is it fair to criticize your article for contributing to the legalization that we're talking about?
I'm always going to say it's fair to criticize my work. I'm probably my own worst critic. But the point of, like, whenever I write a headline like that, and I did write that headline, there is like you are intentionally being provocative, right? Like I want people to ask themselves questions. I want, whether you're outraged by the question, like, oh, that's ridiculous. But I want people to stop and think about it, right? Because, in the end, we will never know, right? Like, we will never know had AR-15s, and I'm picking on the AR-15 just because that's kind of I'm using it as a shorthand, so I apologize for that. But, if they had an Arizona compliant AR-15 with a 30 round magazine and short barrel and all of that stuff that is not legal in California, if that had been in the gun collection, would they have grabbed that instead of the Ruger with a 10 round magazine? And had they had a more effective firearm like that, would they have been able to work faster? Would they have been able to get inside? Would they have been able? I mean, I think that's a fair question. It's one that we'll, it's a hypothetical. We won't know, but I think it's a fair question to ask. And the fact that they didn't have access to that firearm or a more, what the Brady expert would call a weapon of war, their attack was less effective. And I do think their attack was less effective, in part because of the firearm they used. If only that the guy apparently didn't know how to operate it very well, or wasn't a very proficient operator of the weapon.
Well, I think it's important to point out that the Ruger Mini 14 is by their definition a weapon of war. It's actually used in has been used in military service, not just U.S. military service. You know, it's never been the standard issue firearm, but they have used it. The Marine Corps security detail uses it. There are a number of special ops units that use it. There are other militaries that use it. The Rhodesian military uses it. It is a weapon of war by their definition. The other thing is, I think it's important when we're talking about like the difference between an AR and which, by the way, there are many types of ARs that are legal in California. But let's compare.
They kind of look funny, but yes.
They kind of look funny, but yeah. But I mean, a Mini 14 that this person used had a detachable magazine, was semi-automatic, had a cyclical rate very similar to an AR. I mean, he definitely could have, the rifle didn't slow him down. He could have delivered as much ammunition downrange with the Mini 14 as with an AR. The real differences were more cosmetic. And what I mean by that is, he didn't have a pistol grip, for example. He didn't have a foregrip. He didn't have a flash suppressor. But I just don't know if there's a strong case to be made that those differences, which a lot of people would call cosmetic, slowed him down. I mean, he could have, had he used an AR-15 or an AK-47 pattern rifle, he could have been just as untrained and just as ignorant on how to use it as he was on the Mini 14, and could have had even more problems, not just the same problems. But, you were saying, hey, it's a fair question to ask. Did the laws have an effect? And one question I had, there are a lot of questions that were fair to ask. And you chose that one, and you brought up Sandy Hook. And I think one big day, of course, this mosque wasn't just a mosque or just a community center. There were 140 kids or whatever there. It was also a daycare or a school with kids. So there was a lot in common it had with Sandy Hook. One of the big differences was they had an armed security guard who was there and trained. They had a lockdown procedure, which, like you said, we don't know what it was, but we know they had one, and we know it was executed, and I think it's fair to say it worked. My question is, why didn't the article concentrate? Why wasn't that the hypothesis that, hey, wow, look at this, in a state where we've banned quote unquote weapons of war, you had somebody who was able to obtain a weapon of war and then illegally transport it, illegally transfer it to somebody, illegally use it, illegally kill people. Clearly that didn't, it didn't stop death. But only 3 victims, which it could have been, and 0 of them were kids. It could have been so much worse if they hadn't have followed what the Second Amendment folks say is the real solution, which is have a plan, have an armed security guard there to stop it. I mean, clearly this had a lot of similarities with Sandy Hook in that there were kids, it was a school, it was a disgruntled teen who wanted to really truly cause death and damage. But it was different in that no kids died. They were able to defend them. They were able to diffuse the situation. It's horrible, sad, and tragic that 3 people died. But if you really truly compare the carnage and death between Sandy Hook that you brought up and this mosque, I think that it's fair to say that there's a case to be made that the gun laws aren't working, and that refusing to protect kids and schools with guns is a bad idea. That truly what the NRA and some of the Second Amendment organizations are preaching worked in this scenario. So how come that wasn't the hypothesis, or at least how come that wasn't a bigger part of the article?
Well, if you look at a lot of the coverage of the shooting immediately following it, there was a lot of coverage of the 3 victims, and the FBI and San Diego Police Department, they described the security guard as a hero for saving lives. So I feel like there was, like, that was out there. That was very much a part of the conversation, and rightfully so, right? So I just wanted to take another perspective, another look at it, ask the question that I hadn't seen being asked, about what happened. So I'm kind of intentionally taking a different track in the story. And now of course, in the story, I do note the victims, and the credit extended to the security guard. But kind of the point of this particular piece was to look at the policy end of it. And I want, you brought up something that I think is really interesting, because you said this during our conversation before as well, about the things that California banned from these weapons being cosmetic. But that's not, I don't think that's entirely true. I don't think they're entirely cosmetic, because if you do have a pistol foregrip and a pistol grip in the rear, it is a more comfortable shooting position. You're able to keep your sights on target with that forward grip. With a larger magazine, you have more rounds to put down range before you have to stop shooting and reload. Now, when I talked to the guy from Brady, he brought this up as like, whenever these shooters stop to reload and change magazines, that gives victims the chance to either escape or attempt to subdue the shooter. So the more they have to stop and change a magazine, the more opportunities there are to intervene. And the way he described the intent of these laws was that you can't stop all the shootings, right? As you mentioned, right? Everything that was done was against the law, transporting the firearms, having them, they were breaking the law the whole way. So the laws did not stop the shooting. But the way he put it was that these laws are meant to minimize the number of victims and to make the firearms less deadly. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting way to kind of lens to look at how the impact that these laws do have, because they don't stop shootings. Clearly they don't. There are just too many guns. There are too many guns in the country for any type of law you're not going to litigate your way out of violence. But 3 people lost versus what could have been 4, 5, 6, who knows how many. And so that's what I think the kind of the overall view from him, at least, on the intent behind these laws.
There's a couple things. I think that is why it's important that we don't ban magazine capacity, because he's basically saying, hey, look, if you have a large magazine capacity, you have a more effective firearm. And the reality is that's what people need for self-defense. So a ban on magazines is not stopping criminals; it's stopping law-abiding by definition.
I don't know if the larger magazine wasn't, I think, an argument about the effectiveness. I think it was just about the deadliness. Like, it's a deadlier weapon with a larger magazine.
Well, I hate that. Gosh, I don't want to get down into nuance, but deadly. You get hit by a bullet, it doesn't matter how many were in the magazine. It's deadly. Like, it's lethal force. It's
sure.
Deadly. Whether if I have 10 rounds of 5.56 in my magazine, if I have 30 rounds of 5.56 in my magazine, it's still 5.56. So really, when we're talking about higher capacity magazine, we're talking about effectiveness. How effective is this firearm? If I have 10 rounds, can I fend off an attacker easier or less easy than if I have 30 rounds? Can I fend off multiple attackers easier or less easy if I have 30 rounds? So it's an effectiveness issue, not a lethality issue. A 5.56 round is lethal, no matter if it's coming from a 10-round magazine or a 30-round magazine. But what I'm saying is that lethality being equal, and the effectiveness not being equal, it's the people that use it for self-defense, they're the ones that are being limited And that we're saying, hey, look, you as a law-abiding citizen only have 10 chances to save your life, where the criminal has 30 chances to take your life. And that doesn't make any sense. But the cosmetic part, I don't think that, and we talked about this in the interview, I don't think that when they went into the mosque, at some point they decided to leave. They decided not to continue their attack. I don't think that the attack that they did and the attack that they intended, were the same. I think they wanted to cause a lot more death and carnage than they did. But the reason that they stopped the attack wasn't because they didn't have a pistol grip, wasn't because they didn't have a foregrip, wasn't because they didn't have a muzzle, flash suppressor. It was because they were being attacked back. They said, hey, we got to get out of here. We're being attacked back. Whether it was the security guard shooting at them or whether it was the sirens from the armed police officers, they decided they had to get out of there, even though their intention was clearly eventually suicide. They still stopped the attack. But I also think it's intellectually dishonest of the Brady organization representative to suggest that they were the intention of their law that they passed and supported was to get rid of features. That's not accurate, and that's objectively false, and it's provably untrue. The purpose of describing the firearms features was to ban the firearm. It wasn't to ban the features. They didn't go in front of Sacramento and say, hey, we got to get rid of these foregrips. We got to get rid of these pistol grips. We got to get rid of these muzzle flash devices. We have to get rid of them. They're dangerous. They went in front of Sacramento and the voters and said, hey, we got to get rid of these guns. Well, what guns? Well, I'll describe the guns. And then they described the guns, but they didn't know enough about the industry to understand the industry could simply make the exact same gun without these features. So it truly was dishonest for him to suggest that the features like pistol grips, foregrips, muzzle flash devices was their intention. They weren't trying to get rid of those features.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not the policy expert and I don't want to put words in somebody else's mouth. But that's how the effect of the law, that is the end effect of the bans, right? Is that his argument is that they are less lethal without those features.
So
okay, my co-host actually has a question. Her name's Dakota.
Hi,
Dakota, go for it.
Hello. I was a pretty harsh critic when I read the article originally because I think a much better title would have been, did California's magazine capacity limit result in 3 deaths? Did the fact that Amin Abdullah not have great options for firearms that could be effective, is that the reason that he's dead? Is that the reason those other 2 gentlemen at the mosque are dead? So we can look at this same problem and obviously we're coming at it from like very opposite perspectives, but I truly believe that no matter what laws are in place, no matter what firearms people have access to, if people want to kill folks, they will successfully do that. They will find a way to make that happen. And I totally understand the argument about wanting to minimize deadliness, right? And I love the idea that during a reload is a good opportunity in an active shooter situation. That's actually something that we teach in the firearms industry when we're talking about active shooter response, that is a good pause in the situation where even if you're unarmed, you could, possibly tackle somebody, things like that. Obviously, an armed assault against the armed dude is going to be a better option for everybody. But I want to kind of get away from this idea that if only we can stop him during a reload, things will be better. Because better is very subjective. If mass shootings are only about time and math, right? There is the clock starts ticking the moment the first shot goes off. Time is not on your side. The fastest you can stop the gunman, the less people will die. It's just time and math. So as the clock is ticking, we're at single-digit victim counts from the first shot that that is fired. Once we're at 10 shots fired or 20 shots fired or 30 shots fired, even if there's reloads happening, the amount of people who are being killed naturally starts to trend downward because people have run away, people have hidden. There's a lot less. It's like a fish in a barrel. When a mass shooter walks into a place and is unopposed, typically he's got a lot of options of where he can aim his firearm and get victims. So as time goes on, our like lethality trend actually trends downwards. And we see this in pretty much every mass shooting unless they are met with armed force. As soon as they're met with armed force, future victim counts tend to be nothing or very minimal single digit victim counts. That meets the same exact trend that we're seeing here at this mosque shooting. So I don't think we should be asking ourselves, how can we make our bad guy reload his gun more frequently? I think we should be asking ourselves, how can we meet our bad guy with armed force the moment that he starts shooting his gun? How can we stop him? The only way to stop him is by shooting him or making him shoot himself, because if sometimes they hear sirens and they just decide it's time to, commit suicide, that's a typical response from these mass shooters as well. They don't want to go to prison. And so those are really the two ways that we can end this. They can kill themselves or somebody can stop them with physical force. So why aren't we making the focus about getting somebody who's armed there as quickly as possible? Because if we're relying on a 3-second reload, hopefully some unarmed person at a school is going to be brave enough to, tackle this guy while he's in the middle of something that takes literally 3 seconds if you're decent at shooting a rifle. Why are we trying to focus on that when that has the least impact of all of the things we could be focusing on as far as minimizing victim count?
That's a good point, and I think it also it kind of speaks to the greater approach here, where there is no one solution, right? Like we wouldn't want to pin everything on magazine capacity or pin everything on just one thing, and you kind of see that broadly in policy, where you have things like, well, I don't want to open this can, but like the gun violence, restraining order that failed in this,
yes,
in this particular, and I didn't even go into that in my story. And the reason you asked, why aren't we talking this? Why aren't we talking this? Like, I'm writing one article, like I can't write an entire book, like
I totally get that 100%. And like, I understand what your intention was, but I think it was, a little bit, I'm not saying this at you in like a negative way, but I felt like it was a little intellectually dishonest to only show this one side of the same coin. Like if we're talking California laws and its impact on this shooting, which felt like what the story was about, if that's the story, then let's talk about it from both sides. Were there pros and cons? Because, reading your article, I kind of, even though you talked to Mike and there was a little bit of a pro-gun perspective there, I felt like you were very much, willing to go down the same road of the, intellectual steps that the Brady expert was taking, instead of, kind of pushing a little bit of, is there another side to this same story? Because the story is, how did California laws impact this mass shooting, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that I was kind of, whenever we talk about like how we cover news or how you engage in journalism, right? Everybody, as much as you try to be unbiased, we all have a perspective, right? Like, and you can't completely eliminate your perspective, and everybody who writes news, whether they admit it or not, are coming at it from their perspective, so, and because this was my hypothesis, this was my question to start with, I think you kind of see that angle in the story, and whenever I'm covering something like this, like a hot button topic that it's not written in a vacuum, and certainly there is a lot of other coverage out there talking about these very things. Stories I think the New York Times had the story about the gun violence restraining order, and they found those court documents, and there's other stories about the police response, and there's a lot of questions about, because this is another big controversy, the flock cameras and how they track the license plates, and was it working here? Why didn't it do better? So, there weren't, just like there were multiple things that probably kept the body count low in this attack. There's multiple things, at work in these outcomes, and criticisms for all of those things, criticisms of the effectiveness of the flock cameras. Either they were great, or it's, this invasion of privacy, and we're not getting the benefit here. So yeah, there's a lot of variables to consider here, and I'm, in my reporting, like in this particular story especially, I'm just taking one slice and kind of looking at that and asking the question. That doesn't mean that these other questions aren't out there. They are, or that other things didn't impact it. They clearly they did. I'm just kind of asking that question, and yeah, I did it in a provocative manner, because that's that's
journalism
what
these days. Yeah.
It's what gets people to read and to think, and like obviously I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with the kind of thesis question of the story, and rightfully so, and that's just kind of part of it, and I'm happy I'm happy that you read the story, and even if you didn't like it or my approach to it, I appreciate your perspective and talking to me about it. Hopefully, if I cover this, and this isn't my beat, by the way, I cover the military and veterans. I don't cover gun policy a whole lot, but if I ever do, I'd be happy to talk with you for the next story.
Well, I appreciate it. We'll wrap it up. You've given us a lot of time, and I really did want to have a discussion. I wanted people to see that, you're a human being. You're somebody with a perspective and an angle. I get a lot of, from our members and followers and supporters. There's a lot of skepticism about reporters. And I always tell them, I'm like, I got to tell you, I've talked to everybody, and I've been on all the stations in San Diego. I've been in all the papers. I've written op-eds. I've been interviewed. I've met a lot of people, and their motivation is kind of what you described. Like, hey, we're trying to be provocative. We want people to respond to what we're writing. And the evidence of that these days is how many clicks do you get? And I've said, I haven't really run into people that are really truly biased either way. That maybe there's a little bit of leaning, but for the most part, there isn't bias. But this story definitely felt different. This one felt like the hypothesis and the direction, it felt more biased than the ones in the past. So I wanted to have this discussion and talk about that, and maybe, not just show our followers that, hey, you're a guy doing a job, and here's your motivation. But I also wanted to show reporters, show you that, hey, there's a lot of stories that you could cover out here. There are a lot of angles that you could take from really good people that are educated, and we know what we're talking about. I think there were a lot of ways to go with this story. And I don't know. I hope that in the future we continue to have good conversations. I appreciate you reaching out to me and talking about it. I really appreciate you coming on the show and having this discussion. But I hope we can continue to have open conversations, and if we can move each other as far as our perspective and the angle goes, I think that'd be great. But anyway, how about I give you the last word? If there's anything you want people to know, or anything you want people to say, or read or do or talk about, please, here's your opportunity.
Oh, well, thank you both for having me on. I wouldn't be very good at my job if I wasn't willing to face the folks that disagreed with or that disliked my work the most. Like, I really appreciate y'all having me on to talk about it. And I hope that, nobody has to, I'm not in the like persuasion business. I don't write opinion stories, and I'm not trying to change anybody's mind. I'm just trying to, ask these questions. And I hope that, having this conversation that folks can kind of understand, like, okay, like you said, you felt like the piece was biased and whatnot, but I hope that in talking out the process that I went through, that you kind of, it helps understand like how that sausage got made, I guess. And I really do appreciate y'all having me on. And if anybody, if anybody has any information or stories about, military and veterans issues that you think aren't getting told that need to be out there, please reach out to me. I'm always looking for interesting people and people-centered stories. So, that's kind of what it is. And support public media. We're out there for the community.
Andrew Dyer from KPBS. I'm going to take you up on that. We have a lot of human interest stories that I think put a very positive spin on the things that we fight for and the policies that we support. So thank you for coming on the show. Andrew Dyer, KPBS. Thanks, man.
Hey, thank you.
How many times have you been in a situation where you feel like you're not quite safe, but drawing your gun and having it in your hand is not a reasonable solution to your problem? That's why I carry palm pepper spray. It's so discreet you can carry it in your hand no matter where you are, and no one will give you a second look. It's also proven to be effective against lots and lots of different types of threats, including things like dogs. Not all of us think about what we would need to use pepper spray against, but I don't want to get my hands in the middle of a dog fight, and I don't think you do either. Palm pepper spray, versatile, small to carry, easy to conceal, and effective. Carry palm.
Last week, I had the pleasure of visiting Massachusetts to attend a New England Second Amendment activist seminar, all-day seminar, thanks to the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. And I wanted to talk about how successful it was, so I invited one of the board members and one of the organizers to come on. Friend of the show, John Petrolino, the Penn Patriot himself. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
How do you like, before we get started, how do you like this ominous lighting, this remote ominous lighting? Where were you on February 22nd?
I absolutely love it. You look great, Michael. And I know how you guys roll over there. I don't want to like tip my hand too much, and I know you guys have like a constrained amount of time on the segment, but I just have to, while I have a captive audience, give a mad hat tip to Sam the Gunman, also known as the North Korean general, with all of his badges that he wears at the NRA meeting. He looked fabulous. And Sam, love you tons. Can't wait to see you in Dallas in September.
There you go, GRPC. Okay, so let's talk about, first off, what was the event? Tell everybody what was the actual name of the event, and let's start there.
Okay, so this is an initiative put out by Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, which is a 501c4 advocacy group. We're known as kind of like the affiliate group to the Second Amendment Foundation. So Second Amendment Foundation is a 501c3, and everybody's fairly familiar with them. And, Alan Gottlieb, chairs both of those organizations, and he's the founder of both organizations. Well, Holly Sullivan is a fellow board member on CCRKBA. While she was at Gun Rights Policy Conference last year, I believe it was, she was talking with Mike from Gun Owners Action League. So Mike Harris, who's an awesome advocate activist and wonderful dude over there in Massachusetts, they decided to take this idea and run with it. Now, Holly had been batting around, bringing states, organizations together for a number of years. And finally, they just said, let's make it happen and let's just do it in person. So They decided to do this in New England for the inaugural conference. Figure, bring the fight to where the fight is. And no better place than Massachusetts. Well, maybe Virginia, but Massachusetts is a pretty awful state when it comes to gun laws. And as you got exposed to at the conference, you're looking at these New England states of, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire. These are all permitless carry states. In comparison to Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, which have much more restrictions, with Massachusetts being the most restrictive state in all of New England, also happens to be the most violent. So this was a brainchild of Holly Sullivan, and Mike Harris got on board with it. And when they were talking to me about it, I said, well, I'm on board too. So whatever you guys need in the way of help. So I kind of in that capacity, most of the programming, all of that stuff, that was all Holly and Mike. They did a phenomenal job. So that's kind of the 30 seconds on the conference.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's, I remember, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago, you were talking about some states are, good, Massachusetts, bad. 20, 25 years ago, it was, well, it's really only 3 or 4 states or 2 or 3 states, it's California, it's Hawaii that are bad on guns. And then slowly 2 or 3 went to 3 or 4, 3 or 4 went to 4 or 5, 4 or 5 went to 6 and 7. I think we might be up to 7 or 8 by now. Now that Virginia has completely fallen and been, and gun rights have really truly been destroyed in Virginia, we're up to 7, 8 states. I mean, we're really up to California, Oregon, Washington, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts for sure, Virginia. It's growing. It's in a lot of ways, Second Amendment rights are getting better, but in some ways, it is definitely spreading and getting broader. And I know that Massachusetts and New Jersey wasn't officially a part of like the New England crowd, right?
Strange enough that New Jersey, which, Old Jersey's part of Old England. So I don't know why New Jersey's not part of New England. I never wrapped my head around that, but whatever. That's cool.
That should have been a panel discussion right there. So that
you guys can keep it. Fine. You guys have your New England. New York and New Jersey will be over here. Shocking, right? We'll do our own thing.
But Massachusetts is by far the worst in that New England crowd, right?
Well, and if you look back at the history of Massachusetts, and I, often bring this up, Massachusetts has a strong history rooted in, if they have an opinion that's different than you, they call you a witch and they hang you from a rope. And that's no different than what they're doing today. I'm just calling the balls and the strikes as I see them, Michael.
Well, John, I thought it was really interesting. I forget who said it, and I apologize. I wish I could credit them for it. But honestly, the reason I forgot who it was is they said this while they were speaking at the conference Saturday. And it kind of spun me off into, a lot of thinking. He said that, I believe it was of Massachusetts, that they're robbing them of their history. And I thought, man, what a great quote. And the meaning behind that was Massachusetts has a very rich Second Amendment history. And the people today who are taking those Second Amendment rights away, infringing on the rights to keep and bear arms, they are robbing the people of Massachusetts of their history. And I thought, wow, what an intelligent way to put it. What an interesting perspective. But I thought it was really, really great. But there was a lot of that. So the conference was a lot of meet and greet. Hey, I'm from this state. Hey, I'm from that state. Here's what we're doing. Well, here's what we're doing, which is very valuable. There were a lot of talks. There was a talk by a representative from each state. You had some elected officials. You had some big shots like Jared Yanis and John Lott and Dick Heller. I had some panel discussions. How do you think the event went generally?
I think the event went really, really well. And I give a lot of credit to Holly and Mike on the programming and how they scaffolded the whole thing. They kicked off with that state of the state address from each state, with a representative from each state, speaking about what's going on in their states, and then breaking out into these, either individual conversations or speeches rather, or these panels and these fireside chats. And I think that's where you got you get a lot of value from both. And I think breaking it up with the fireside chat and the panels also gives people that chance to interact a little bit more than you might be accustomed to in a strict, lecture based kind of conference, and this is something that they started to do at GRPC proper a number of years ago. And it seems to be a formula that works, and it seems to be something that people like. So I think the structure really went very well. And you heard from those attorneys that were talking about some of the legal barriers and the things that are being challenged naturally. And then also hearing from the legislators. And I think hearing from the legislators was very important, and what resonates with them, what doesn't resonate with them. So when you do interact with your legislative, beings or legislative representatives, what will stick and what won't stick. And then naturally, towards the end, you had a phenomenal panel with Bill Sack from the Second Amendment Foundation. And then you had Joe Laporto from NRA ILA. And of course, Holly was representing the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. And having that, kind of panel of discussing the national level and how the groups really do. And Michael, you know this, but a lot of people don't know unless you're kind of a policy nerd. But these groups are all really working together, and we are all communicating with one another. And, if something doesn't work for this group, it might work for that group. And I'm not saying that everybody agrees with 100% of everything all of the time. Just like everybody, though, has group chats with multiple people from multiple of these organizations, and everyone's kind of in contact, and we're all rowing in relatively the same direction. And I think that panel really drove that home, and how important it is to realize that, the groups are working together. The groups are communicating with one another. And I know that.
Yeah, the days of this is my favorite group and they're the ones that are doing it and nobody else is doing it, that's over. You're a dinosaur. You're an infant if that's your attitude, to be honest with you. I mean, that's way in the past. All the groups, big and small, are working together. They're working on different parts of the field. Some are doing the lawsuits, some are doing the activism, some are doing the informational stuff, some are doing the cultural changes, some are doing the education, but everybody's marching to the beat of the same drummer. That's really truly, I would say that became full swing. That really became standard operating procedure in 2025, and it continues to be that. And I think it's awesome. There's no longer, hey, this is my favorite team and I'm going to cheer them on and poo-poo the other Second Amendment team. No, we're all in lockstep, going the same direction, maybe in different ways, against the anti-gunners, against the anti-gun politicians, and if you got to catch up, you got to support all the groups. There's no reason to speak ill of any of the groups. And the conference on Saturday was proof positive of all that. I saw NRA board members, I saw SAF folks, I saw all kinds of people there, and it was really, really great. It was really wonderful. So what's next? This was a regional conference. The idea was to pull the New England states together and have them, not pull them together, but have them communicate and talk, and and I think you did a great job. What's next for this concept?
So we obviously are planning on replicating this and bringing it across the country. So right now we're going to come together. There's a lot going on because, as you know, as we're finishing with this conference right now, what are we in now? We're in June, just around the corner. We have a bunch more conferences coming up now. We say GRPC this year, and I know Adam talked to you and Costas talked to you about this a couple of weeks ago. GRPC this year is not just GRPC, and in the past it's been GRPC and AmCon, but this year you're also going to have AmCon. You're going to have the states conference, a day-long conference for states groups, and you're going to have the Lawyers Summit. And I believe the Lawyers Summit this year, that's also going to have CLE credits. They're working on that for the attorneys to get CLEs. So that's all going to be on September 25th. So we're dovetailing right into planning AmCon, which, you and your team are also pivotal in helping out planning AmCon, which is the Alternative Mass Media Conference. So for those of you who are watching and listening in, you definitely want to mark your calendar September 25 through 27 for AmCon and GRPC. And AmCon, if you're not a media person and you don't want to be a media person, that's okay. We are opening up our doors to all people that want to come and attend, because the things that we talk about and the things that we are doing in AmCon are very universal for advocacy and activism too. Whether that means you want to just do crazy social media posts and try to make effective messaging that way, these are people that are coming together to try to give you their best lessons learned and teaching that. So we're very excited about planning AmCon, which is, again, the 25th. The state's organization, also the 25th, and then GRPC proper is the 20th and 27th. Naturally, the reception's on the 25th. And that's going to be in Dallas. So I just want to plug that right now. If you want to go to those events, if you want to go to both AmCon and GRPC, there's two separate registrations, but you could register for both if you go to amm-con.org, amcon.org. And if you're just interested in going to GRPC, you could go to saf.org/GRPC. But you do need to register for both conferences. I think there's a small nominal fee for GRPC, $20 or $25. I can't remember. And naturally, if anybody has any questions, you can email me at john@thepenpatriot.com. I like to get that out of the way. News, tips, questions, whatever you guys have. But after GRPC, we do plan on replicating the regional formula, whether it's going to be next year or it's going to be later this year. If it's going to be, I'm not really sure what we're doing yet. We have to get our feet back on the ground. But the plan is to replicate this. Chairman Alan Gottlieb is very excited about this. He is giving us full support to do whatever basically we want with these conferences. And Holly, as the chair of the committee to plan these conferences, I mean, she's just doing absolute yeoman work on all of this. So I'm excited to see what's next. I'm waiting to see. You know what I mean? You tell me and put me in, Coach. That's kind of where my position is right now.
Awesome. Great. John Petrolino, the Penn Patriot. Follow him. Check him out. John, thank you for everything that you do. Outstanding writing, as always. You continue to learn and get educated by John Petrolino if you follow his work. He does so much for the Second Amendment. I truly appreciate everything you do. Thank you for making the time to come on the show. An excellent job to Holly and Mike Harris and the whole crew that made it happen in Massachusetts. And I was truly honored to attend and just be witness to the beginning of something really, really great. So thank you all.
Michael, total pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
If you carry a firearm or take self-defense seriously, you need to think beyond the moment you defend yourself, because the legal fight can start immediately after. That's where Self-Defense Fund comes in. They provide legal defense protection for responsible Americans. Right now, our viewers can save 25% off a membership. All you have to do is go to selfdefensefund.com/GOR and you'll save 25% off their membership. So protect yourself before you ever even need it. Join today. Again, selfdefensefund.com/GOR gets you 25% off their already affordable membership rate.
So a while back, we talked about a website that I had found called gunviolencearchive.org. And on the website, there's a whole bunch of different reports. So if you go to the reports tab, you see all these different choices. Mass shootings by year. You can select mass shootings for all years. And then things like accidental deaths, accidental injuries, etc. And I want to start by just saying, I think this is a great resource. I don't necessarily know if I agree with all of their methodology on how they determine what category some things fall into. But I think if you are a concealed carrier or if you're somebody who owns firearms, reading some news stories about accidental injuries and accidental deaths is actually a really great way to kind of learn, like, okay, what was this family doing that allowed their, toddler to get access to that firearm? And how can I make sure that I avoid those same mistakes? Or, how did this person accidentally shoot themselves in the leg? What did that look like? Was it the holster they were using? Was it that they weren't safely handling the firearm during a draw? Like, what was the thing that caused this accident? So if you just want to like really broad look at what's happening in the US with firearm injuries, I think it's a great resource for that, because they scrub all these different news sources and newspapers and all the media, and then they also use some police databases as well. So you can see like, they're pulling things from police reports. So anyway, just kind of a plug for like, go dig around on this website a little bit, because it's super interesting, and I spent some time on it. We also talked last time about the fact that they list these like 20 different reports, but there's not one for defensive gun use. And as I'm clicking through the reports, I realized that the URL for each report is pretty similar. So if the title of it is Children Killed, all you have to do is gunviolencearchive.org/reports/children-killed. So I was like, I wonder if they have a defensive gun use one. So I tried a bunch of different things, defensive gun use, DGU, whatever. Finally found it, defensive-use. If you type that in directly, you will get a report of all the defensive gun uses that they've been able to find, even though they don't publicly advertise that on the standard reports page of their website. So feel free to check those out. I think they're really interesting. But the purpose of kind of why we're talking about this website again is because I had mentioned that I was curious if the mass shootings that they're referencing in their mass shootings of 2023 report were the same kind of mass shootings that we think of when we hear that term in the news. There's been a lot of numbers thrown around. You see, Twitter groups for anti-gun organizations saying things like, we've already had hundreds of mass shootings this year, and things that just make you think at schools all across America every day, somebody's going in with a gun and killing kids. Because that's what mass shooting brings to mind for a lot of us. And so I kind of did a little bit of a deep dive, just going through different incidents and, what the source was for the incident, how much information they had. And I realized as I'm going through this list that a lot of them were very targeted acts of violence. So pretty common, for some reason, fast food restaurants seemed to be a pretty hot spot for trying to shoot somebody that you have been trying to get, I guess, because all of these fast food restaurants, it's a very similar thing that was happening. Bad guy wants to shoot and kill another bad guy, but they're both really bad at shooting. So they shoot each other a little bit in this crowded place, and they end up hitting a bunch of other people in the process. Sometimes it's one person with a gun just shooting and missing and hitting other people. And then sometimes the person who is the intended victim is shooting back, and that adds to the body count, right? Because more people are getting hit. So as I'm kind of looking through this, I'm trying to determine, like, are these, gang-related crimes? And a lot of them were. So when we're thinking about, what can we do as the Second Amendment community to help minimize deaths in mass shootings? Earlier when we were talking to the KPBS journalist, I mentioned that the only thing that matters in a mass shooting is time and math. How fast can you get the guy to stop shooting people? That concept and pretty much all of my thoughts related to active shootings come from a body of work that Ed Monk put together. Ed Monk is a fantastic instructor. He studies active shootings. He does statistics on them. He gets, nitty-gritty information, like what second was the 911 call placed and what second did the first police officer arrive. He's got fantastic statistics. And he talks about this concept of time and math. The longer it's taking, the more people are dying in the first couple minutes, and then it kind of starts to slow down as it's harder to find new folks to shoot at. So my point with all of this long monologue here is that when we're thinking about mass shootings, a lot of times we're thinking about things like schools and churches. And I think most of us could probably agree that a good guy with a gun in those places is going to be a really good first defense against a bad guy with a gun coming in and taking innocent lives. So we kind of agree, for the most part, the Second Amendment community agrees on a solution to that problem. I don't see a lot of people saying, no, I think there shouldn't be any guns on the pro Second Amendment side. But we don't really spend a lot of time talking about these other things, like domestic violence situations where the whole family ends up being killed. That is classified as a mass shooting. We don't talk a lot about gang violence in public places that result in other people being killed. We don't talk about drag races. I was surprised how many drag races were on the mass shooting list. There were quite a few just in the city of LA, or the surrounding areas, and that was a little bit of a surprise to me, because you don't think of, street racing as ending in a gunfight, but a lot of times there is a gunfight involved, or that it's getting classified as a mass shooting. So when we're thinking about the solution to these problems, I think it would be helpful for us as a community to kind of parse out, well, what is the biggest problem here? How can we solve that? Is it are there more gang violence shootings? Well, what can we do to help eliminate or alleviate some of that gang violence that's happening? Is it because there's not enough policing? Is it because there's not enough community programs? To me, the gang violence piece of it isn't really a mental health problem so much as we talk about when we talk about school shooters and church shooters. We talk about, well, they're mentally ill, they want to kill people. Yeah, so let's start kind of separating out some of these categories and thinking about solutions to each one individually. I think it's very smart of the anti-gun groups to just label everything a mass shooting and to call every time a gun is fired gun violence, because it sounds good and it helps them kind of get laws passed and scare people into voting against their own rights. But at the same time, on the other side of this debate, on the pro 2A side, if we could dig into this a little more, if we could kind of understand, we would be much better educated when we're talking about folks. When, we have a friend who says, hey, I don't know what to be afraid of. Should I be getting a bulletproof backpack for my toddler? We'll be more well informed, and we can have more educated conversations about solutions. And maybe you're encouraging that mom to go talk to her school board about getting an armed security guard, or maybe you're going to talk to your church about having, armed security that is paying attention for some bad person to come in. This is a long-winded way to say that we should all get a little bit more educated on mass shootings so that we can argue against the lies that were being sold by the other side.
I think it was all perfectly exactly right and well put. I've definitely, and we've talked about it in the past, I think that we would benefit greatly if there were better language and different terminology for the types of shootings that are happening.
Yeah.
Like you pointed out, I mean, if you have, so they really define a mass shooting as something, it's a very broad definition, but most people think of a mass shooting as a disgruntled person that goes into a movie theater or a school to cause as much carnage as they possibly can.
Yeah.
Whereas they define a mass shooting, or a mass shooting is defined broadly as one gang member killing his rival gang members, on a Saturday night after a drug deal goes wrong.
Right.
And gang member.
Oh, sorry. For the record, the Gun Violence Archive, their definition is 4 or more shot or killed, not including the shooter. Go ahead, Mike.
That's it. That is an enormously broad definition. And the solution for preventing a gang member from, first off, becoming a gang member, second, becoming a criminal gang member, and third, shooting 5 people, that's a very different solution than a mentally ill teen who, is experiencing a break from reality and decides to go take it out on, a schoolyard. Yeah. Those are very different solutions. Now, the reality is, the reason it's like this is because politically, it works really well for the Brady organization, for Moms Who Want Action, for all these anti-gun organizations. Their sole purpose and goal is to simply ban guns, no matter what they say, or however they try to, present it. They're basically saying, hey, look, the more examples we can give for why people should ban guns, the more emotional we can make people, the easier time we have passing laws to ban your guns. Meanwhile, people are suffering, people are dying, people are left defenseless, people who are trying to defend themselves and own a firearm are going to jail or going to court because of these ridiculous gun laws. So Dakota, why did you find this database? Like what happened that made you find this database?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I was researching something. It may have been mass shooting related. So I get into discussions with folks online in the comments of things like Everytown's Facebook posts, because a lot of times people are blindly following a soundbite. They don't have any context. They don't have any education on firearms. And so my goal is not to change that commenter's mind, because that's probably not going to happen. But for other people reading who haven't really made up their mind yet, they may see this kind of, well thought out response and think like, oh, that person has a point. And that's all I want to do. I want to cause a pause for somebody to have enough space where they can make their own decision on what they believe and what they think about firearms and their role, firearms' role in mass shootings. If you go from guns kill people, guns are bad, and you have no space in between, like you can't make your own opinion. And so often somebody will say something like, I can't believe we're just letting, hundreds of school kids die, whatever it might be. And then I'll go find like an actual number and I'll come back and I'll say, it's not 400 like this said, but it is more than one. And I don't agree with that either. But let's talk about what the solution could be, because the things we've been trying aren't working. It's actually getting worse. So let's pivot this conversation to a solution. So often I find resources like this because I'm trying to get particular data so I can argue somebody's point in the comments of like an Everytown post or Brady post. So I'm sure that's how it happened, but I don't remember the exact impetus.
Yeah, I'm somebody who's very tuned into all things Second Amendment, but especially stories about some kind of mass shooting. And it if it's like March and there's some mass shooting that makes the headlines and you hear the reporter say, this is the 202nd mass shooting of the year. And I'm
Right.
like, it's March. Like how, like I haven't heard of any, why? And by the way, why do all the news stations choose to cover the exact same mass shooting? Like where were they on the other 203 or whatever the claim is?
Right.
And the reality is because it is not an accurate number, really, truly. It's a meaningless definition that is completely and totally misleading on purpose because
Right.
it's there for a political goal. So if you're wondering, if you're, 3-4 months into the year and you're listening to the news talk about, the 150th mass shooting or whatever, and you're wondering like, how can that even, that doesn't make any sense. Well, it's because it's not good information. It's junk in and junk out. And again, like you said, Dakota, the issue is that there are problems that can be solved. There are things that can be prevented. There are situations that can be made far less tragic than they are if we actually implement the right solution, but we need the proper data in order to do that. And, we talked about the mosque shooting earlier. I mean, there are 100 and something kids there that day that were saved by a solution that the groups like NRA and GOC and GOA and all these other groups, FPC, that the Second Amendment community said, yeah, this is the right way to make things less tragic. Did it prevent a deranged, horrible person from doing a deranged, horrible thing? No, but it certainly lessened the severity of it and saved lives. And if we have the right information, we can do that. So what's the database? How do we find the database?
gunviolencearchive.org/reports. And that'll give you all of the reports that they show obvious in the menu. But if you do want to explore that defensive use one, then you're going to go to gunviolencearchive.org/reports/defensive-use. And that's going to take you to the defensive uses report. And you can export these as Excel documents, so that you don't have to click through a bunch of tabs. I think it only shows like 15 per page or something. You have to click on all the pages, but you can export them, and there's links to the news article or the police report or whatever it is they used to come up with their data. And they track things like victim count, how many people were shot, how many people were killed, how many perpetrators were there, things like that.
Awesome. Cool find. Great job. Nice work covering that. I think you did an excellent explanation. Anything else people need to know?
No, I think that's it. Just get some education so that you can better defend our rights when people bring up the mass shooting argument.
There you go. Dakota, Adelphia, Gun Owners Radio. Awesome job.
Hey, quick question. If you carry every day, when's the last time you actually wiped down your firearm? Yeah, exactly. Probably a long time. Problem is, sweat, lint, moisture, it builds up fast, and you should be taking care of it, but life gets in the way. That's why I like the Seal One Gun Rag. I just keep it right next to my EDC, and at the end of the day, you do a quick wipe with your Seal One Gun Rag. It only just takes a few seconds. I mean, it's super easy. Cleans, lubricates, protects, all in one step. Smells nice too, so you can dab it behind your ears and use it as aftershave. Go grab a Seal One Gun Rag at your local store and make it a part of your routine. Seal One Gun Rag, check them out.
We're here with Sam for the Stump My Nephew segment, and we've got a really fun question today. I don't know. What do you think, Mike? Do you think he's going to get it?
That's a good question. I got to tell you, man, back in the 80s, I never bet against the 49ers, and here in the 2020s, I never bet against my nephew, Sam. So
I like that. That's a good,
yeah.
That's
so
a good thing.
I am concerned with his record being tainted by this question, but I'm not betting against him.
So my guess is that he's not going to know the answer off the top of his head, but he's smart enough that he's going to think about it for a second, figure it out, and then say it. That's what I think is going to happen.
That is kind of par for the course. All right.
Yes.
Well, fair enough.
All right.
And as you know, before you go in, as you know, everybody, he doesn't know the question in advance. He doesn't get to look it up. He doesn't get to chat GPT it. He doesn't get to grok it. He's a big fan of AI, and he uses AI all the time, but he's not. Anyway, go ahead. So this is the first time he hears the question. Go ahead. Fire it up.
Okay. This is from Ben Chang in El Paso. That's kind of fun. Texas listener. Thanks for tuning in. All right. Question for Sam. What does the QIT stand for in the common QIT FBI targets, aka the bowling pin target?
Ben from El Paso, thank you very much for writing in. What does QIT stand for in the FBI bowling pin target? Well, I maybe you should bet against Sam on this one because that's a tough one. Perfect combination of extremely specific, but also very much firearm related. It's not some like, oh, what gun was sold with this car or whatever. I don't know. I've never been in the FBI, so I don't have that advantage there. I'm gonna have to guess on this. Q seems like it would be qualifying. T, I'm guessing would be time or training. This is all, I've never been in the FBI. So this is obviously, anything I can say here is just a guess. I'm going to have to guess qualification and training for QIT, but I think that's wrong. I don't know. I'm final answer. That's my guess. I think Ben from El Paso is kicking my butt here.
That was pretty close. 2 for 3.
It's quick, intense teasing.
No, it's absolutely not that. Also, I never wanted to hear that in my ears ever.
It's quality internal timing.
No.
Okay.
It is qualification instructor training.
Qualification instructor training. Okay.
Yes.
Well, you got me there.
And honestly, like that sentence doesn't make a ton of sense. But I guess like if you knew that the instructors use that target. But my understanding is both the instructors and the recruits all use the same bowling pin target. So it's a confusing one. It says this term is associated with specific targets used in firearms training and qualification courses, particularly those adopted by law enforcement agencies. The purpose of QIT targets is that they're designed to evaluate a shooter's accuracy and proficiency in realistic scenarios. They are part of structured training programs that help shooters develop their skills under pressure, simulating real-world encounters.
Well, there you go. The FBI, for whatever gripes any of us might have about their conduct sometimes, the FBI does a really great job with firearm training and evaluation. They do a lot of metrics of like they measure ammunition performance. They have pretty aggressive handgun trials. So a lot of the time when the FBI puts out a new batch of data and they say, hey, we tested these handguns and this is the one we like, and we tested this ammo and this is the load we like. A lot of police departments and sheriff's offices around the country that don't have the resources to do their own testing just do whatever the FBI is doing, because they have decades of experience and a huge amount of funding that goes into figuring out the best way to get people to shoot well, especially under pressure.
Yeah, I read a book by John Douglas, who was one of the first profilers in the FBI. And he was talking about this is a while ago. I read the book back in the 90s, and it was after the end of his career. So he was given perspective on, the 50s and 60s and 70s. And he was saying that at one point early on in the FBI's existence, that it was very much a shooting club. He said, if you couldn't shoot, you were not going to be invited to be an FBI agent. That was such a huge qualification. So, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
cool. All right.
The FBI instructor course of fire is really easy to find online, and it's a great kind of litmus test for like where are you at in your skills. The instructors have to get 90% or better on that qualification, but if you're just looking for something to practice on the range, you just want to like go to the range, use 50 rounds, see where you're at. You can track your hits for each string and track your time for each string, and then you can do it again in a year and see if you've improved or, what area of the qualification you struggled with the most. It's pretty doable at most indoor ranges. The only thing is there is a stage where you have to kneel, which might be tricky depending on your indoor range. They may not allow that. But for the most part, all the strings can be, shot at a normal range. So it's a fun qualification to try out.
There you go. QIT FBI. Gaddafi is a terrorist. FBI, I think is what it stands for. All right. Awesome job. Listen, Ben from El Paso, we owe you a hat and a shirt. And then we owe you a special prize. So get a hold of us. Congratulations. Awesome job. You stumped my nephew, and we'll figure out what your special prize will be. We'll figure it out. You're all the way out in El Paso, so we got to get creative. It can't be like a lunch with me and Dakota. Otherwise, that'll be a nice long drive. Maybe we could split the difference and meet in Arizona or something like that. But I don't know. We'll figure it out. Yeah. Anyway, awesome job, Sam. You got stumped, but that's okay. It was a tough question. I get it. You'll come back bigger, better, and stronger next week. I know.
Yeah, well, it was a good question. Thanks for having me on, as always.